the FBI raided his facility.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they were looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly he has a version or a sample of stable element 115.
What?
That's supposedly. Yeah, and that's supposedly what they were looking for.
Well, of course.
Supposedly he had gotten that from the lab, and when he was at S4, and that he had managed to smuggle out a stable chunk of this element 115. And there was a video that George Knapp had from back in the 80s where Lazar was demonstrating how this stuff bends light and, you know, what it does, like it has weird effects.
How soon after that raid was 115 is now called Moscovium? How soon after that raid was 115 synthesized? I think it was synthesized in Russia.
Well, synthesized by a particle collider, and so the when they got it is a very temporary, quickly dissolving form, but they proved its existence.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly, what Lazar is saying, wherever these beings are from, they obviously have a completely different environment, and they have a stable version of this element.
Yep.
And this element is crucial to this gravity propulsion system. That it's a part of this reactor, it gets bombarded with radiation, produces this gravity field, allows you to just slingshot through the universe.
All he cares about is what he saw, what he knows is real. But if you do just talk with him privately, they did show him, you know, a photograph of an autopsy of a being with a singular organ. They told him that, yeah, the human genome had been altered, you know, just all sorts of crazy shit. And he just has no idea if it's true or if it's...
God, the whole thing is so wild. I just wish, you know, if Bob's lying, my God, what a great liar. Yeah. He's amazing at it.
Right.
And he's been telling the same lie for 30 plus years. And then there's elements of it that, how would he know that? Like, how would he know about element 115? I mean, element 115, when he was talking about it, was theoretical. Over time, many of the things that you talked about, even in the 80s, have proven to be true. Things that people said were not true were proven to be true. Element 115 was one of them, right?
Right. Element 115, the fuel they had, was stable. In other words, it didn't decay. It wasn't emitting radioactivity. When they synthesized the 2 or 3 atoms of the 115, it did decay, and it was not a stable element. So they're kind of two different things. But this is kind of typical. Elements always have, or pretty much always have, stable isotopes and unstable isotopes. Like, I think cesium has like 30 unstable isotopes to it. So, well, hydrogen, for example, you're familiar with hydrogen gas. It's stable. It's not radioactive. But there's also 2 other types of hydrogen, deuterium and tritium. And deuterium isn't radioactive. It's another stable isotope of hydrogen. But tritium is radioactive. Now, they're all hydrogen, but they just have different amounts of neutrons. So it's the same thing with other elements and element 115. Depending on the amount of neutrons it has, designates the isotope, but it's 115. They will continue to take or experiment and try and make 115 at different isotopes, and I'm sure eventually they'll come up with a stable version, but it's the stable version that has the properties that we're talking about.
I've become more positive on Lazar just insofar as I think he was at S4 Area 51. And I think there's going to be a lot of corroborating evidence that he was at least there, and a lot in his story checks. John Lear and he were friends. John Lear is this babbling UFO nut. He's obsessed with UFOs. He's writing weird, like, disinfo-y style stuff with Bill Cooper, Behold the Pale Horse guy.
Which is a wild book.
Yeah. And so he's crazy. Bill Cooper.
Doesn't he talk about bases on the moon?
He talks about bases on the moon. Lear also talked about a soul catcher that like controlled our souls on the moon.
Oh boy.
And so Lear was like flooding the zone with all sorts of weird shit. Lear comes from an interesting family.
Right.
His father is Bill Lear, who's the autopilot wizard. He created the first business, basically the first private jet, the Learjet, in the 50s and 60s, and was an associate of a guy I hope we talk about named Thomas Townsend Brown.
Yeah.
And so I think, Lear was engaging in all sorts of bullshit. Was he a useful idiot, or was he a sophisticated agent provocateur? I'm totally open to him having been a useful idiot. In fact, there is a video of him saying, I was told, I was given all the Bob Lazar files or whatever, and I was told about, to actually, like, he said a guy named Admiral McClellan knew that I ran my mouth. I even have this video actually on the doc that I sent you, Jamie. It says, knew that I ran my mouth. So that's why we got Bob a job or whatever. We knew that part of this stuff would leak. And it was like this limited hangout strategy on behalf of this guy named Admiral McClellan or whatever. And he was this useful idiot to sort of get it out.
You're probably like one of the most important figures when it comes to journalism in UFOs. And when you broke the Bob Lazar story, is that 89? When was that?
1989.
89. 1989, I remember reading about it. I remember hearing about it. I remember watching clips on television and watching countless Bob Lazar interviews. It all came out of you. I mean, did you think at that time, what was your thoughts about UFOs before you had met Bob Lazar, and how much did it change while you got to know him and hear his story?
It changed quite a bit. I had not really given it much thought at all. It's probably the same level of curiosity as most people. You go about your life, you pay your bills, you go to work, you love your family, and it's always out there somewhere. Hey, I wonder what the deal is on that.
Right.
But had not really dwelled on it until it was a day in 1987. Into the studio comes a guy named John Lear. And I had heard sort of a little bit about him. His family was famous. His dad developed the Lear jet, the 8-track tape. John had run for the state senate, and he had a certain amount of credibility with our news organization, KLAS-TV, because he had helped us break a really big story. And the story was the stealth fighter, the F-117. He had told my boss, Ned Day, managing editor, about this amazing plane that was invisible to radar flying up in Tonopah in Area 51. We had an interest in Area 51, not UFO related, but Ned broke that story. It went national. So John Lear comes into the station one day with a stack of what turned out to be UFO documents. He plops them on Ned's desk and says, Ned, this is going to be the next biggest story, the biggest story in history. It's a UFO cover-up. Aliens are here. Technology's been recovered. Ned takes a look at it and says, I'm not doing this story. If it was true, I'd already know about it. This is crazy. Well, I'm eavesdropping, as I tend to do. I'm a curious person. So as he's going out, I said, Lear, let me take a look at this material. And I looked at it. I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. At the time, I was producing and hosting this little public affairs show, 30-minute interview show. It would air Sunday morning at 6 o'clock. Nobody watches it. It would be interviewing a city councilman, a county commissioner. What the heck? I'll put Lear on there. And I let him go. And he told me this big scenario about secret treaties with aliens and recovered technology and a giant cover-up. Some of the information sounded outrageous. Some of it seemed like it would be worth checking out.
Believe it or not, I'm not into UFOs. I don't follow stories or,
Even after your experiences?
No, I'm fascinated with the technology, and it irks me like every night I go to sleep that, that it was my own doing, essentially, that prevented me from continuing on in the project. I mean, it's that to be on that cutting edge of technology is so alluring to me.
Right.
But by the same token, I don't really care that there's aliens or where they come from. I mean, the prize is the technology, and that's what I'm fascinated by. But so I don't listen to UFO stories and that sort of thing. But George Knapp is, he's the guy that has the contacts and tries to thread everything together. And what he recently told me is he found, I don't know, it was either documentation or people that he spoke to. It's that the existence of this project, the project that I was on, it's something that they seem to take out every 8 or 10 years.
So that's a very specific memo, and this is actually, this is the first time I'll be very clear with people about it. It's a big topic of conversation right now. It's called the Wilson Memo. You can look it up. Admiral Wilson met with a scientist who's actually was featured in one of my films. Everybody has been debating whether or not this document of a conversation with a sitting admiral at the time is a real document. It's an actual conversation that happened, and this document is real. Everybody wants to know. The world is going crazy right now in the UFO world. I'll tell you straight up right now, I'm in the position to know, and it is a real document. That it is real. So the conversation you read in that conversation was had. I can't attest to every...
You're not being very clear.
Sure.
Please.
No problem. So there was a document that is circulating right now that is really big. It's going around everywhere. People are asking and wondering.
What is this document?
It's called the Wilson Memo, is how you can find it online. Admiral Wilson meets with this scientist, and they have this discussion, oddly enough, at special projects at EG&G. And if I remember, the document is from 2001. I'm telling everybody right now, it's real. And we'll see. My history is pretty good with like saying if something's real or not, right? So here we go. The document comes out. They meet at EG&G special projects. In 1989, they stumble into a problem. This happens. They put the technology away, and then they bring it back out and see if material science has caught up and if they can make any progress. So this document kind of talks about this process. The big thing I get from it, and a lot of it's vindicating to Bob, and one of the things it's vindicating besides the EG&G thing, is that private industry, so this guy's an admiral, and he says, I found out about your SAP, your Special Access Program. I need to know about it. And he's going to a private part of industry, and he is denied access. And he says, I should be running this program. And they were able to deny him access.
This happened as part of this limited hangout strategy, where they knew that they could delete the records at MIT. They knew that they could stigmatize him because of the brothel. They knew that he was this not traditionally trained engineer who just happened to strap a ramjet on the back of a Honda or whatever and meet Edward Teller serendipitously. They knew that they had plausible deniability on all of that stuff. There's a great line in the Oppenheimer movie where Leslie Groves, played by Matt Damon, says, "I didn't hire Oppenheimer in spite of his communist sympathies. I hired him because of them." If you have a top secret program, you want compromise on people. You want to be able to blackmail them. And so I think, that should be taken at face value, in my opinion. And the reason that the story itself can't be taken at face value and needs to be seen through that lens is Lear and Bob Lazar were friends before Bob Lazar got a job at Area 51, S4. And so if you have a top secret program, you're going to do a basic background check. And Lear is going to come up as a guy with a UFO blog, right? And then the CIA is all over the UFO program, right? And he was flying CIA cargo jets. And he says that he disaffiliated in 83. That's bullshit. George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell have talked about how that's BS. And actually disaffiliated much later, into the mid-80s or whatever. Why would you continue to pay a guy who is leaking your crown jewel secrets?
So we do this third show with Lear, and he hints that he knows a guy who might be going to work out at Area 51 and knows something about alien technology. That guy turns out to be Bob Lazar, but Lear didn't give me the name at that time. A couple months later, I am anchoring the 5 o'clock news on KLAS, and we have a nightly or evening interview segment, 5-minute segment, live interview. Our guest doesn't show up. And we're scrambling to find somebody to fill that hole. And I thought about Lear. So I called him up, not knowing what had been going on in Lazar's life or Lear's life. And I said, "Hey, is your that UFO guy you told me about, is he around? Would he do an interview?" Just turned out that Bob had been through the ringer. A lot of stuff going on in his life. He felt threatened. And he said yes. We had to black out his face. We do this interview, and he spills the basics of the story. I worked out there at a place called S4. I saw 9 flying saucers in an underground base. This is technology that came from somewhere else. I'm in fear for my life. Holy cow, the phones start ringing off the hook. My news director comes rushing in, the station manager, is that for real? What's the deal on that? And we realized we had touched the pulse of the public in a way that I didn't really understand. We arranged to go meet Bob Lazar, my news director, Bob Stodall, and I, that following weekend, and put him through a paces where we would ask him questions about his background and how he got the job. We spent a couple hours with him, and we walked out of that meeting thinking, holy shit, what if this is true? This is really risky for us as journalists. It's risky for our personal reputations if it blows up in our faces and we do this story, and it would really damage the reputation of our news organization, which is KLAS is a jewel. It's always been a leader in Las Vegas, one of the best TV news operations in the country. We're putting a lot on the line. Well, look, we decide, let's take our time. Let's look into this guy's story. And then in order to understand Lazar, we'd have to look at the bigger picture of UFOs. So I started a cram course on ufology, and I read everything. And I spent 8 months cramming for a final exam that never happened. I read everything. I interviewed people. That same year, MUFON had its international symposium in Las Vegas, and there all the world's UFO people came right to me. I got to interview them, traveled around, went to Los Alamos, Lazar took us into the lab. We took cameras in there. He walked us around, waving to people. We didn't even have to stop for security. Took us into the lab like it was a rabbit going through its own burrow. He knew his way around. We were allowed to take a camera in there. We put those stories together, put them on the air in November, and man, it just went through the roof.
We try and do what we can, and once we reach a roadblock going, we really can't figure it out, it's just friggin' wait, put the thing away, wait for science to catch up, and, a decade later, let's take the project out again and see, all right, now where can we go?
But there's got to be someone who remains informed, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you've got your scientists like you and Barry. You got your people that you compartmentalize. You got these people working on
Yeah,
this
there
project.
has to be some people
Right.
that know everything.
You've got security, and then someone's going to be on the outside saying, hey, we need people to guard this building. Don't let anybody in for 10 years.
I think a lot of that is private industry, and I think that's how
Really?
they keep it. Yeah, I think that's how they because the government is just so leaky. I think that's kind of what they're doing.
That's what the document kind of proves. You just articulated that it is in control of private industry.
What private industry? Some aerospace company? Something?
I don't know.
Yeah, the admiral wouldn't name it in the car
Right.
in the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So they still have these things, supposedly.
I would guess. I mean, I don't have any information on that.
Have
at
you
all.
ever asked anyone that has any inkling of any idea of where they got them or how they got them?
No, but something must have been said to me from Barry, but it was just too long ago, and I can't quite remember what was said, but it just left a seed in my mind. I think at least one of them was part of an archaeological dig. So it's old. At least one of them is old. I don't know if it was the one I worked on, but I remember something to do with an archaeological dig.
Whoa.
So that means it's not just old, it's ancient.
That'd be a great Steven Spielberg movie,
Yeah.
right?
Every night of this 9-part series, people got the audience got bigger, phones ringing off the hook, people calling, giving us information. Suddenly, it's on something called Paranet, which was sort of a precursor to the internet, and it was huge, and it changed my life for sure. I had no idea that there were so many people out there interested in the topic, and I was hooked. And I really got hooked on Lazar not only because his story. Personally, I was interested in him. We became friends. I saw what happened to him after that live interview, and in the 7.5 months before we went and I revealed his identity, people were really messing with him. I mean, you cannot convey what it was like, how weird it was then, breaking into his house, leaving the windows open, messing with things in his home, breaking into his car, leaving the doors and windows down, just messing with his head.
And you think that was the government that was doing that?
Yeah, I do. I think so. And then, so I had put out a call to people, hey, I want other people to come forward.
This was before his identity was revealed. We should explain this.
I am actively seeking information from the public. If you ever worked at Area 51 or S4, you know anything about this, you're at Nellis Air Force Base, reach out to me. So I started getting calls, and 6 people right in a row who had talked to me on the phone and offered to give me information were visited right after the call. One of them was a guy who did tax returns for people at Nellis Air Force Base, and he had got to know these guys really well and got information about crashes. There was a guy who was a golf pro at Nellis who had gone on road trips with officers and told him about this weird stuff out at Area 51 that seemed to be from somewhere else. He gets visited and told to shut up. There was a lady who worked in the court system. A cop told me about her. And I talked to her on the phone, and she had worked at the court system, but before, she had worked for a company called Holmes and Narver, which is a defense contractor. And she said she sat in as a stenographer in these meetings and heard these conversations between the government contractors and Air Force officials about crashed saucers. And they would, after the meeting, they'd take the tape out of the typewriter and destroy it and take all the notes, and she agreed to tell me this story. It was just a tiny piece of the story. The next day, she's visited by these 2 guys in suits. They tell her, look, you are still subject to your security clearance. I hope you know that. And then they said, we know you traveled to LA to see your daughter, and we know she comes here. It's a big desert out there. It'd be terrible if something happened to either one of you. This lady is scared shitless. She didn't make that stuff up. So 6 people who had offered to give me information on the phone, one right after another, get visited, and it made me mad.
Bob Lazar has been a controversial figure in the world of UFOs for decades, ever since he came forward with claims of working on reverse engineering alien technology at a site near Area 51. Known for his detailed accounts of alleged extraterrestrial crafts and propulsion systems, Lazar's revelations in the late 1980s have sparked endless debates about the existence of UFOs and the extent of government secrecy. So, when breaking news surfaced of unknown UFO drones flying over New Jersey and New York, many turned to Lazar for insight. How would he interpret this footage? Could these sightings be connected to the alien technologies he described decades ago? The reports from New Jersey and New York have reignited interest in UFO phenomena worldwide. Eyewitnesses and videos depict glowing orbs and drones maneuvering in ways that seem to defy physics. They dart, hover, and change direction with a precision that conventional aircraft cannot achieve. Speculation about their origins has ranged from experimental military technology to extraterrestrial craft. And for someone like Bob Lazar, who has spent much of his life trying to shed light on hidden truths, these sightings raise critical questions. Before we delve into Lazar's reaction to these sightings, let's revisit the core of his story. In 1989, Lazar claimed he worked at a site called S4 near Area 51. According to him, the facility was a top-secret laboratory where scientists were tasked with reverse engineering alien spacecraft. Lazar detailed one specific craft that he called the Sport Model, which he said used an anti-gravity propulsion system powered by element 115, a then theoretical element that supposedly created a gravitational field around the craft. This allowed it to perform maneuvers that seemed impossible by conventional physics. One of the most striking aspects of Lazar's account is the way he described the motion of these crafts. He claimed that the technology allowed for instantaneous acceleration, abrupt changes in direction, and hovering without any visible means of propulsion. Sound familiar? These are the same characteristics being reported in the New Jersey and New York UFO sightings. This is where Lazar's insights become particularly relevant. Lazar has often stated that the technology he allegedly worked on at S4 was far beyond anything humans could have developed at the time. He argued that it wasn't just a leap in technology, it was a paradigm shift, something so advanced that it would require an entirely new understanding of physics. So, when reports of UFO drones performing similar maneuvers surface in major metropolitan areas, Lazar's claims inevitably come back into focus. When asked about the recent sightings, Lazar's reaction was both unsurprised and cautious. Over the years, he has maintained that UFOs, or more specifically, advanced crafts like the ones he described, have been present on Earth for a long time. From his perspective, the sightings over New Jersey and New York are consistent with what he's been saying for decades. Lazar suggested that the crafts observed in the recent footage could be similar to the ones he allegedly encountered at S4. However, he also raised an important question. Are these objects extraterrestrial in origin? Or could they be the result of humans successfully reverse engineering alien technology? For Lazar, this distinction is crucial. If these drones are human-made, it would indicate that the secretive work he described in the 1980s has borne fruit. But if they are not of human origin, it raises the possibility that extraterrestrial beings are actively observing us, or at least that they're allowing their crafts to be seen. This isn't new, Lazar has said in past interviews when asked about UFO sightings. It's just becoming harder to hide. One of Lazar's most intriguing observations about the New Jersey and New York footage is the way these drones seem to interact with their environment, or more accurately, the way they don't interact. In many UFO sightings, including the ones Lazar described at S4, the crafts appear to operate independently of atmospheric conditions. They exhibit no visible exhaust, no sound, and no turbulence. Lazar has always maintained that this is a hallmark of advanced propulsion systems, like the one he claims to have studied, which creates a gravitational field around the craft. The propulsion system isolates the craft from the environment, Lazar explained in a previous discussion. It's not interacting with the air, the wind, or anything around it. That's why it can move the way it does. This observation aligns with what witnesses in New Jersey and New York have described. The objects moved with an eerie silence, displaying an agility that seemed almost otherworldly. To Lazar, this is further evidence that these drones, whatever they are not operating on conventional principles of flight. Another key aspect of Lazar's reaction to the recent sightings is his focus on the implications of public awareness. Lazar has often criticized the secrecy surrounding UFOs, arguing that the knowledge of advanced technology could benefit humanity in profound ways. For instance, the anti-gravity systems he described could revolutionize transportation, energy production, and even space exploration. However, he also acknowledges that such technology, if misused, could be catastrophic. The technology is incredible, Lazar has said, but the potential for misuse is just as incredible. That's why there's so much secrecy. It's not just about hiding it from the public, it's about controlling it. This sentiment is particularly relevant in the context of the New Jersey and New York sightings. If these drones are human-made, who controls them? Are they in the hands of a government, a private corporation, or some other entity? And if they are not human-made, what does that say about the intentions of whoever or whatever is behind them? Lazar also touched on the timing of these sightings. In recent years, the U.S. government has begun to release previously classified information about UFOs, now referred to as UAPs, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. The Pentagon has acknowledged that it has no explanation for many of these encounters, and high-profile reports like the 2004 USS Nimitz incident have brought the topic into the mainstream. For Lazar, the timing is no coincidence. He believes that we are in the early stages of a slow disclosure process, where governments are gradually preparing the public for the revelation of extraterrestrial life, or at least for the existence of advanced technologies that challenge our understanding of reality. People aren't as dismissive as they used to be, Lazar noted. The stigma is starting to fade, and that's an important step. But the real question is, why now? Why are we seeing this shift in how UFOs are being discussed? Lazar speculates that the recent sightings, combined with the government's changing stance, could be part of a larger plan to acclimate humanity to the idea of contact. Whether that contact is with extraterrestrial beings or with technologies that seem alien in their capabilities, the implications are profound. As Lazar's reaction unfolds, he doesn't shy away from addressing the skeptics. He acknowledges that not every UFO sighting is evidence of extraterrestrial craft. Many can be explained by natural phenomena, human error, or even deliberate hoaxes. However, he also argues that the sheer volume of credible reports cannot be ignored. What we're seeing now isn't just lights in the sky, Lazar said. We're seeing patterns, consistencies, and data that point to something real. The question is, what is it? This focus on data is a recurring theme in Lazar's discussions. Despite the controversy surrounding his story, he has always emphasized the importance of evidence. And for him, the footage from New Jersey and New York adds another piece to a puzzle that humanity has been trying to solve for generations. One of the most thought-provoking aspects of Lazar's reaction is his exploration of what these sightings mean for humanity's future. He has often said that the discovery of advanced technologies or contact with an extraterrestrial civilization would be a turning point in human history. It would challenge our assumptions about science, religion, and our place in the universe. If we're not alone, that changes everything, Lazar said. It's not just about UFOs, it's about who we are and what we're capable of. For Lazar, the recent sightings are a reminder that the universe is far more complex and mysterious than we often realize. They are an invitation to look beyond the boundaries of what we think we know and to embrace the unknown with curiosity and humility. As the discussion comes to a close, Lazar leaves us with a message that is both cautionary and hopeful. He urges us to approach the UFO phenomenon with an open mind, but also with a critical eye. He reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge is never easy, but it is always worth it. Whether these crafts are from another world or from our own, they represent something extraordinary, Lazar said, and it's up to us to figure out what that is. The recent footage of unknown UFO drones over New Jersey and New York has captivated the world, sparking questions that go to the very heart of who we are. And as Bob Lazar's reaction shows, these questions are not just about UFOs, they're about the limitless potential of human understanding. The conversation about UFOs, sparked by the sightings in New Jersey and New York, has grown into something much larger than a simple debate over lights in the sky. For Bob Lazar, these events serve as yet another reminder that the truth about UFOs is not only elusive, but deeply entwined with questions of power, secrecy, and the human spirit's innate desire to understand the unknown. Lazar's life and work have revolved around these themes, and the recent sightings provide a unique opportunity to revisit his claims with fresh eyes. To fully grasp Lazar's reaction, we must first consider the broader implications of what he has described over the years. The technologies he claims to have encountered, anti-gravity propulsion, energy generation using element 115, and crafts that seem to operate outside our understanding of physics, represent a paradigm shift that could fundamentally alter life as we know it. For Lazar, these technologies aren't just theoretical. They are, according to his account, very real, and they challenge humanity's current grasp of science. The New Jersey and New York sightings share striking similarities with Lazar's descriptions. Witnesses have reported crafts that maneuver with unparalleled precision, changing direction and accelerating in ways that defy inertia. These behaviors align with the capabilities Lazar attributed to the alien technology he worked on. But the significance of these sightings goes beyond the technical details. They raise profound questions about who or what is controlling these objects, and why they are appearing now in some of the most populated areas of the United States. Lazar's reaction to these sightings underscores his belief that we are living through a pivotal moment in history. He has long argued that the secrecy surrounding UFOs is unsustainable in the face of mounting evidence. The footage from New Jersey and New York is part of a growing body of data that is becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss. From the Tic Tac UFOs observed by Navy pilots to the declassified Pentagon reports, a clearer picture is beginning to emerge, one that points to the presence of advanced, non-human technologies. For Lazar, the question is not whether these sightings are real, but what they mean. Are they evidence of extraterrestrial visitation, as he has long suggested? Or could they be the result of human innovation potentially derived from reverse engineering alien technology? Lazar has always maintained that the work he did at S4 was part of a broader effort to understand and replicate alien propulsion systems. If these drones are human-made, it would suggest that significant progress has been made in secret. But if they are not, it opens the door to even deeper mysteries. One of the key themes Lazar touches on in his reaction is the role of fear and control in the UFO narrative. He has often said that the secrecy surrounding these technologies is driven not only by the potential for misuse, but also by the fear of losing control. Advanced propulsion systems, for example, could render current energy markets obsolete. Anti-gravity technology could revolutionize transportation, but it could also destabilize economies and military power structures. Think about what happens if this technology becomes public, Lazar has said. It's not just about flying cars or free energy. It's about the entire structure of society changing overnight. This perspective is particularly relevant in the context of the New Jersey and New York sightings. If these drones represent a breakthrough in technology, whether human or extraterrestrial, their public appearance could be a deliberate signal, a way of forcing governments and institutions to acknowledge their existence. Lazar has speculated that such events could be part of a slow disclosure process, a way of acclimating the public to the reality of advanced technologies or even extraterrestrial life. Lazar also addresses the psychological and cultural impact of these sightings. He acknowledges that the idea of UFOs still carries a stigma, despite growing evidence and public interest. This stigma has often been used to discredit witnesses and researchers, creating a barrier to serious investigation. But Lazar believes that this is changing. The New Jersey and New York sightings, like many others in recent years, have been captured on high-quality video and corroborated by multiple witnesses. These factors make them harder to dismiss and easier for the public to engage with. The more people see these things for themselves, the harder it becomes to deny, Lazar says. At some point, the evidence speaks for itself. This shift in public perception is a significant development. For decades, the UFO phenomenon was relegated to the fringes of science and culture, dismissed as the domain of conspiracy theorists and hobbyists. But today, it is becoming a legitimate field of inquiry, attracting attention from scientists, journalists, and even governments. Lazar sees this as a positive step, but he also warns against complacency. The search for truth requires not only open-mindedness, but also rigorous investigation. One of the most compelling aspects of Lazar's reaction is his emphasis on the interconnectedness of UFO sightings around the world. He notes that the events in New Jersey and New York are not isolated incidents. Similar sightings have been reported in recent years in countries ranging from Brazil to Japan to Australia. These global patterns suggest that whatever is behind these phenomena is not confined to a single location or nation. For Lazar, this raises intriguing questions about the motives and intentions of these crafts. If they are extraterrestrial, why are they appearing in such diverse locations? Are they observing humanity as a whole? Or are they drawn to specific areas for particular reasons? And if they are human-made, who is operating them? And why are they being deployed in such a public manner? These aren't random events, Lazar argues. There's a pattern here, and understanding that pattern is key to understanding what's really going on. Lazar also delves into the role of technology in shaping how we perceive and understand UFO phenomena. In the past, UFO sightings often relied on anecdotal evidence or grainy photos, making them easy to dismiss. But today, advancements in cameras, sensors, and communication technology have transformed the landscape. High-definition footage, radar data, and other forms of evidence are now readily available, providing a more robust foundation for investigation. The New Jersey and New York sightings are a prime example of this shift. The footage is clear, the witnesses are credible, and the events have been widely reported in the media. For Lazar, this represents a turning point. The combination of technological advancements and public interest is creating a new environment in which the UFO phenomenon can be studied more seriously and systematically. Another critical aspect of Lazar's reaction is his focus on the ethical implications of the UFO phenomenon. He has often spoken about the responsibility that comes with understanding advanced technologies. While these technologies have the potential to benefit humanity, they also carry significant risks. For example, anti-gravity propulsion systems could revolutionize transportation, but they could also be weaponized. Similarly, energy systems based on element 115 could provide unlimited power, but they could also destabilize global energy markets. The technology itself isn't good or bad, Lazar says. It's how we use it that matters. And that's why transparency is so important. We can't afford to let these discoveries be controlled by a select few. This perspective is particularly relevant in the context of the New Jersey and New York sightings. If these drones represent advanced technology, whether human or extraterrestrial, the question of who controls them becomes paramount. Lazar argues that the public has a right to know about these developments and to participate in the conversation about how they should be used. As Lazar reflects on the broader implications of the sightings, he also acknowledges the limitations of what we currently know. Despite decades of research and investigation, the UFO phenomenon remains one of the greatest mysteries of our time. For every piece of evidence that brings us closer to understanding, new questions arise, pushing the boundaries of science and imagination. For Lazar, this is both a challenge and an opportunity. He believes that the search for truth is not just about finding answers, but about asking better questions. The New Jersey and New York sightings are a reminder of how much we have yet to learn, not only about UFOs but about the universe itself. The universe is far more complex and mysterious than we can imagine, Lazar says. And that's what makes this journey so exciting. Every new discovery, every new sighting is a step closer to understanding who we are and where we fit in the grand scheme of things. Lazar concludes his reaction with a message of hope and curiosity. He encourages people to approach the UFO phenomenon with an open mind and a critical eye, to embrace the mystery rather than fear it. He believes that the recent sightings in New Jersey and New York are not just anomalies, but part of a larger story, one that has the potential to reshape our understanding of the world and our place in the universe. As humans, we are explorers by nature, Lazar says. We are driven by a desire to understand the unknown, to push the boundaries of what we know. The UFO phenomenon is one of the greatest mysteries of our time, and it's up to us to solve it. The sightings over New Jersey and New York have captivated the world, sparking conversations that bridge science, philosophy, and culture. And as Bob Lazar's reaction shows, these events are not just about UFOs. They are about the limitless potential of human discovery